This is episode 35, and I'm speaking with Michelle Moloney King of Beir Press. A quick first question, actually. Have I said that right? Beir.
Yeah, you have. That's it, Berbua. And it means bring victory, bring talent.
Excellent. So, Michelle, it's really nice to meet you. I'm very impressed with the work you're doing, especially how much work you're doing. And I'd like to know, to begin with, what first got you interested in poetry?
Loads of reasons. I think I'm kind of coming at it from a more art history point of view, because I always had an interest in the surrealist. Even when I was little, I knew about art and the art movement and Bob Dylan, and I knew about the Beatles and how when they went to the Maharashi, they were able to create amazing work over there. Because I was lucky, like I was an 80s baby, but I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and my older brothers and sisters were teenagers. So while they were discussing things like that, I was, in primary school, kind of like daydreaming about it. And, just even like reading Dr. Seuss, seeing the original Bambi that came out, I think in like 1924 or 34 in the 80s, and you could see all these really amazing, like surrealist properties within it. And then when I was watching Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and when Willy Wonka spoke, I think I was 6, and I just stood straight up and I was like, what is he saying? Because it makes so much more sense, even though it doesn't make any sense at all. And there's this transcendence within kind of a movement of the poetry of potential and taking 26 letters and breaking them apart, and it's freedom, you know. And I grew up on the farm place. There was this really ancient sweat house, and it's where people hundreds of years ago used to go, and they used to burn like herbs, and they would take all their money, all the resources to build up a big fire so the men could go in and voyage. I don't know, were they shamans? We don't really know a lot about it because of Ireland's history, but it was on my property, and I used to look at it every morning from my window, and I used to wonder. And, so I suppose I'm kind of more of a shaman. I'm more of a journeyer. I'm more of someone kind of who's interested in quantum physics and quantum entanglement and kind of questioning the power of language. So I was always looking for an opportunity of how to use it. I studied hypnotherapy. I'm a master hypnotherapist. That scared me because you could see the power of language. And it was just during lockdown, and I had nothing else to do. I wasn't someone's daughter. I wasn't someone's best friend. I wasn't someone's walking mate, coughing mate. I wasn't someone's teacher. I was nothing, because my husband and my toddlers, they're very happy. They're very self-sustained, and they expect nothing from me, only love. And it was the first time in my life that in becoming no one, I kind of had to step up, and I had to kind of almost step through my shadow self, and I knew I needed some sort of tool. So I drew out the wellness wheel, and I just saw that there was nothing in the creative section. I was like, I used to be a writer, like I was always trying to write, and then I just thought, I'll go onto Twitter. That's where all the interesting people are. I found a poet. I thought, that's it. I can do that. And then I found John Ashbery the next day. And it's amazing then in the UK, seeing all the talent over there. That was so inspiring. And I think Twitter kind of really opened my eyes to that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot more experimental and visual poetry in the UK than there used to be. What's the situation in Ireland when it comes to this sort of stuff? Because I've always thought that Irish poetry was more experimental than British poetry. I don't know if that's because of someone like Joyce and his fame.
Yeah, like we're very lucky with Joyce. And again, we had all his books at home, and I remember reading Ulysses because I was so bored at home, and we only had one channel, rural Ireland in the 1980s. So I read his book when I was 15. And I love Beckett, absolutely adore him and what they did. So, but there's this great love, there's great growth for Yeats and for all that kind of lyricism, which is fantastic. But I do notice, like say, in the Irish journals, you would see a lot of kind of experimentation within the lyrical poetry, and it's cool, but it's still kind of a representational poetry. So I wouldn't even call lyrical poetry anymore. It's representational, and that's cool, and it's beautiful, and the techniques that they use are amazing. But to me, it's like reading a hypnotherapy script because I know what they're trying to do and they want to elicit emotions from me and they want to kind of almost manipulate me into feeling a certain way. And I don't like that. I want something that is, it's all about the potential. I'm interested in the thing behind the end product and kind of journeying through that. Um, but we are lucky. We have some cool names, like we have the group Gorse Journal. I think that's how it's pronounced. Um, there's a couple of people, they PhDs in it and they're lecturing in it. But it would be great to see it more kind of more common amongst more normal poets. You know, like I view myself as a normal poet, and not just the academics. That's what I'd love. But there is an appetite for it. Yeah, I see it locally. I was asked to do a couple of workshops, which was amazing. And
Yeah, about three years ago, I think I've lost all track of time during the pandemic. It's 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It could be the same. I don't know. But there was a conference in Dublin that I went to, which was it was run by Gregory Betts, who was so it was a meeting of Irish poets and Canadian poets.
yeah,
So perhaps from that I got the impression that the Irish and the Canadians are a lot more welcoming of experimental work.
yeah.
But I don't know if that's just because I was in the group of experimentalists.
Well, was Stephen Fowler at that?
No, he wasn't at that one.
Oh, yeah, because he was saying to me as well when I chatted to him for my YouTube thing that he thought there was a load of experimentation in Ireland. I think there is, but it's within the more academic circles, or I haven't found it, or I don't know where it is. But there's enough to kind of keep the appetite going. But from what I've seen from Beir Journal, it's all UK poets. From Beir Press, it's nearly all UK poets as well. So I suppose that's just what I see through my own kind of little neck in the woods. Um, God, I was going to say Gregory Bates. He's actually going to be published by Beir in March, so that's going to be really exciting. Um, yeah, like I would love there to be kind of more grassroots experimentation. Or if there is in Ireland, let me know. I would just love to kind of be a fly in the wall and just watch and just learn and just talk about it.
Well, Steve Fowler runs the European Poetry Festival, so he makes it his business to go around every country in Europe finding the experimentalist. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's found more than you have in Ireland
I
because
think
he's
he
that
has.
dedicated to it.
Yeah, yeah, I think he has. He gave me a few names and they were quite cool actually. So, but more like it would just be cool to have more because experimentation, I suppose it's a label. And when I was listening to your podcast when you were saying like about labels and your anti-label, I totally get that. I don't really believe in like experimentation because what I'm doing it's not experimentation. It's not avant-garde because the avant-garde movement happened 100 years ago. I'm not an avant-gardist. Like, is there a name for what we're doing? What are we doing? Like, it's different. I follow this amazing writer. She's Irish, Dr. Nolene. Is it Ellen Nolene? But she recommended this cool book. I don't have it here now. And she said that experimentation now, according to this book, is more about a quest for knowledge and inner knowledge and questioning what we know and what we think we know, rather than really, what would happen if I use this word instead of that? What would happen if I use this metaphor instead of that? So there's kind of there's layers to it all, really, isn't it? You know, like you're a formalist, but how do you find like? I think what you're doing is more of tarot card reading because you even said that there's this alien voice that and that almost reminds me of meditation that when you meditate and you put the ego aside and the thinking mind aside, you are connected and you can feel it to this shadow self, this higher being. And when you kind of remove all emotional attachment, amazing things can happen. And you do that through your work. And with the Vedic traditions, they do that through discipline, through controlled breathing, through particular movements, through the spine being straight. But you do that through rules and measurements and meter, and that's fascinating. Like, I'd love to hear more about that and the alien. Does the alien have a name? What does the alien want you to know?
I haven't personified the alien yet, but it's true. I mean, I completely agree, and I love everything you're saying because, of course, the more strict the rules that I apply, the more the ego is put aside and the more that this voice comes through. And so there is something shamanistic about it. And I also loved what you said about the labels that we use. Avant-gardism as a term, that's a tradition from 100 years ago. So, but when we use it, we mean innovative and experimental. But of course, that if you're just doing the avant-garde practices that the avant-gardists did,
You're just
that's not innovative.
Yeah, it's not. If you're just copying John Ashbery, you're John Ashbery. Stop it. It's not cool. When I use the term avant-gardist, I'm being brazen, and I'm kind of doing it in a really cheeky way because I kind of want to play with people's perception of me. Like even on Twitter, sometimes when I, retweet, and I'm just constantly, I fire it up, but I'm doing it on purpose to kind of provoke people, and I think you do that through yours. You're kind of challenging people of what you can do with the meter and that alien voice of that comes through you. You're trying to kind of bring out projection of others and what they think it means, and almost in a way it's like asking people to be present. But I feel when I do it, it's like it's the most innocent, naive and childlike thing I can do, because they say it in all the religions, the children are the key, the children are the answer. But children find it hilarious when parents are serious or when they are too fastidious, and they're all about this mad rebellion, and they do these things all the time to provoke us, because when an adult is provoked, they're present. And I think that's what it's almost a play with. It's a play with people's presence. So I use avant-garde to be cheeky, but it's also when I was little and I used to watch the young ones, and I was far too young to watch it. When they went to this mad, crazy show and they were in there, like, I don't know, nails coming out of their head and total puns, total disgusting things I still haven't even seen in Ireland. And they couldn't understand the art. So one of the characters goes, "Oh, how don't you know? It's avant-garde." And the way he said it was just so funny. And I suppose when I use it, that's the kind of way I say it, like, "Oh, it's avant-garde." It's almost like self-select out. This isn't for you. But also, my workshops have provoked almost a riot and a very combative attitude towards me. I've almost gotten into fights because I read a poem and people get angry. And in one of the workshops, it was my own mother who was leading the riot. What is a visual poem? I don't understand it. What do you mean, market making? And you know, but when you say to people, "Oh, it's avant-garde," they're like, "Okay, that's a word I don't know. It's French, so I'm going to self-select out, and I'm going to give that person a pass." And almost that's kind of what I'm trying to do with it as well, because I see in school, like, I would never give out to a child, I don't use a loud voice. I never comment on the behavior I don't want to see. I will only praise the behavior I want to see, and that's, if a child is constantly provoking you, it's because they want attention, but I will only ever give them positive attention. And you kind of have to, if you meet fire with fire, you're creating this huge positive and negative pull, because that's magnetism. Whereas if you can kind of go negative with them, you're beside them. And when you're beside someone, you can move with them and they'll move with you. But is there a word for, like, can we come up with a new word for it? Because there is a movement. I can feel it. There's such support for Beir, and I would love there to be kind of a word for a movement, um, because why not? We are the lockdown poets. We came out of a huge pandemic, and there's all this art being created, and it's not just any art, it's fire.
I agree. And so in terms of the correct labels, I guess experimental is too loose. It also, if we think about all the great artists of the past, it's hard to say that they weren't experimental, because of course they were in their time. So I don't think experimental works. I think there needs to be something that shows that the difference is between what we're doing and what lyrical poets are doing. Because lyrical poets use elements of language to convey emotions and ideas, whereas we're using elements of language to just explore the elements of language and see what comes out of it. So we're really using elements of language to explore elements of language. I don't know about your practice, you can tell me, but certainly for me, when I'm writing a poem, I don't know what that poem's about until really late in the game. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm seeing what the words say.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting because it's a real, you're removing yourself from the poem. And by doing that, you're creating a space in the universe that wasn't there before. So you're kind of playing with the quantum field, and that's how creation is. You can vision something, but you don't know what it is, and you know not to label it, and you know not to have an emotional attachment to any outcome. And you use the discipline of the rules that you've created for your own writing, and then by doing that, this new entity is created within the poem, so it's like a life within each of them. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
but I see a lot of visual poetry doing the same thing. I mean, would you say your work does that?
Yeah, because I suppose that's how you first start to communicate is through languages, and it's your first mode of interpreting the world is through images and through trying to convey what you see as a child through scraping and marking. And what do I do? Do you know what? Mine is more of the dowsers.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's kind of more of me almost allowing the pen to be a dowser, and it's almost me of putting everything that's happening in my mind at once. Because I mean, it's like as if my mind is able to, there's like five sources of energy going into it, and it's putting all of those down through the one thing and getting it all down. But I really want to invite people into it, and that's why I would sometimes hide it. I call it Easter eggs because it's a thing in computer programming, which is my undergrad, and you'd hide things within the code as a treat for people. So I always try and hide little symbols or images and see if people can ever find them. No one ever has. No one ever gets back to me. I'm such a nosy person. Like if I see someone that's interesting, I will deep dive. I will learn everything about them. Because it informs my practice and it informs what I know on their practice and their work, and it always makes things more interesting. But what I'd love to know about your work is just even the term the alien. Like, uh, tell me more about that and about your practice and how that kind of came about.
or how I started. Well, I started as a formalist, just a traditional formalist, really, and I still do that. And it's funny because you're saying about using these labels to be mischievous. I still do that now. When people call me an avant-gardist, I say no, I'm a formalist. I'm very traditional. And
Yeah,
then when people refer to me as a formalist, I say
yeah,
no, I'm an avant-gardist. Look, I've done all these experimental things. So yeah, I essentially I was writing formal poetry, and I noticed that I was better at writing formal poetry than free verse, and it was because of having to follow the rules and having to put my ego aside, my intentions aside. And so then it just came about seeing, well, how far can I push these rules, and how much can I push aside my intentions and let language tell me what to do.
and I don't know, without sounding maybe a little bit hippy dippy, but have you ever kind of seen, the way? See, I'm studying art therapy next year, and it's not about, say, my interpretation of someone else's work. I have to facilitate them and ask them questions to see what their interpretation of it is. So, have you ever looked at your work, and can you hear like what it's about? Is there a common theme? Like, what's it trying to communicate to you?
Well, that's a deep question and a difficult question. I don't know. I think in those terms about it.
Right.
I would say that I love those small moments where I write something and I look at it and think, well, how the hell did I write that? Like, where has that come from? And that's almost like a spiritual experience. I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't call it that because I'm more of a materialist in my outlook, although open-minded materialist. But I definitely know the feeling that you're referring to.
Yeah. It's almost like a feeling of expansion within here, you know. Because I get that when I read over my own poems, I find it hard to do because even now thinking about them, I'm laughing. Because by the time I finish reading one of my poems, I'm like laughing because I'm like, that is hilarious. It is the weirdest, oddest thing. But within them, it's like a play, a TV show, a documentary, and I can hear kind of these voices, not voices, but like the voice that I would put on when I'm reading it. It's serious, but then it's mocking, and then it asks a question, and then it laments over something. And mine all actually do have a meaning, and I can see the meaning in all of them. you know, but then I'd never say it because my meaning doesn't matter because it's not mine anymore. Like, you know, sometimes you'd see these poets and you might see it through your press and they're very precious about their work. For me, when it's done, it's not mine anymore. I don't care what people do with it, you know. If I was to give my work to a publisher and they were to delete half the poem, I'd be like, why are you even asking me? I don't care. Like, do what you do. Get out of here. Um, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I think I'm obviously a control freak because I don't like people editing what I do. But to go back to what you said, I think I didn't fully answer your question. An overall meaning behind the work, you hinted at. I think perhaps when you're applying these constraints, you can see that your unconscious mind is working just as hard as your conscious mind. And so the same themes keep coming through, for sure. The same images appear, and I'm not even thinking of using that image. It's there. So I get that.
You know, it might be cool for like a collection for you to kind of to get together your poems and then to kind of look at it and at a state of when you're half asleep and half awake, like middle of the night, and maybe you have I find like drinking milk or something that makes you even sleepier, and then you read a poem and then maybe you could just without thinking give your brain something to think about, like look at a bill that needs to be paid, because I trick my brain all the time and I'm like, okay brain, you have to think about that now, and then write down what you think your poem means while your brain is busy thinking about the bill that needs to be paid, and anything that comes to mind, it's about this, it's about this. That would be quite cool to kind of see that, kind of the behind the scenes of it and your own kind of meaning of it and how it came to be. Just thought, and it's interesting what you said about you don't like people editing your poems. I would never edit someone's poem because poetry to me, the real cool experimental stuff or whatever it is, it's art because it's a Jackson Pollock piece to me, and it's like it's all the scribbles of what they did in order to get the outcome. And I mean, I'm a gallery owner, and as a gallery owner, if someone comes into me with a painting, I'm not going to say to them, you need to add black there, you need to delete the pink here. I, I find it crazy that someone would edit someone's work, crazy, especially in poetry, because it shouldn't be, it's sacred. So, you know, I'd
Yeah.
never edit, but I just see that some poets are really particular about their work or how they're represented, you know. But I was lucky because, you know, when I finished my teaching postgrad, I wrote for loads of different journals, and how they represented me it was kind of rude almost. How I was treated was almost badly in some incidences because it suited their style. And I was just like, you know what, whatever, I don't care. So to kind of have that almost cavalier attitude sometimes.
Yeah, but that's a very interesting contradiction almost, though, that you would never do this to anybody else, yet you don't mind people doing it to you.
No, because you see, it wasn't a poem. I was just writing pieces on like literary events and workshops that I went to and book launches, and they edited that work. And you know, but you see, I wouldn't. Yeah, because the thing is that if you care, you're almost giving. It's all about heat. And you can never give too much heat to a thing because you're giving it too much energy. And if you give a thing too much energy, it becomes really charged. And then it almost becomes a magnet for the opposite kind of energy. I don't know. It's more energy work of what I do, and I always try to stay in the middle of a thing. And if something annoys me, I just know that I have the tools within myself just to say, look, that says more about you than it does about me. And if you need to portray me in a certain way, well, you know, I'm not going to work with you again. I'm not going to send you anything again because it's more about you, and we'll see how you get on in the long run. But you don't affect me anymore.
Yeah, so you definitely consider yourself a hands-off editor, and as people might know, you're publishing my next book,
Yeah, yeah,
and
can't wait.
and you've been very kind in letting me. Uh, I effectively I didn't even ask. I was extremely rude. I just designed it and sent it to you and said, "This is I've designed it." I think I said, change it if you like, but I was secretly thinking, no, I wanted this one.
No. Yeah. Oh, I got that impression. When I got the email, I wanted to email you back and go, it's okay, Anthony, I'm not going to touch this. You're okay. No, because I got it, you know. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit of a liar there because I know what my first book with someone else, I took over that process. That's how I started the press because I essentially did it when another press published my work. I was like, no, no, sweetie, this is how it's going to be. But uh, I don't know, but I hope I did it in a nice way. I wouldn't really do it again. I don't know. I'm going off the point here. You know, Johnny Publisher wants to publish my work. Of course, whatever you want, it's your house style. But in the first instance, that publisher just needed a few pointers, and I was able to help with that because I do have a lot of techie skills. So just
Yes.
letting publishers know I'm cool to work with.
Yeah, well, I know that you're a great designer of books. The one thing you will be designing for my book is the front cover, and I'm really looking forward to that because all the covers you've done so far are amazing, and they're daring, and they're not quite like anything I've seen.
Yeah, yeah. I think because anything that's been seen, it's been seen. I don't really want to repeat it. Um, and a lot of the time, it's me. I make most of them on my phone. And it's when I'm not thinking and I'm maybe waiting in a queue, or it's when, you know, my toddler is, I don't know, bashing me with a bunch of Lego. And it's always when I'm not thinking. But like, I am kind of lucky that, see, I will sit down in fits of energy and I'll just create a lot. But because there's so many, say, demands on my time, that when I do sit down to do something, um, you do it quickly, and the quicker you do something, the less you're thinking, and the less you're thinking, the better it always is. You know, I even see with the press, the more involvement I have with a project, the worse it goes. It almost feels it's just you just can't have that emotional involvement, or you can't have. I don't know. It's like you probably see it with your press. Your press is an entity of itself and has its own tastes, and you probably work for the taste of the press now.
Yeah, I feel that
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, again, you
certainly.
wonder where things have come from somehow. But why is this, why is this suddenly a Penteract Press thing when I didn't choose for it to be? It's just emerged
Yeah.
of its own volition.
Yeah, it's a proper now, and it's like, no, like, Anthony, you work for me. And I even find for me, like, I have to make hard decisions sometimes, and normally I used to be such a people pleaser, but when it comes to the press, I'm like, oh no, like, I can't go back to Bear and say this person wants this. I like, I'm going to nip this in the bud now. And then later on, I'm like, God, where did I even get the strength to do that, or the vision to do that? And it's just, I work for the press now, and it tells me what to do almost. And I think as well, the more, and it's got to do with, in physics and the observer effect, and the more people that are using their own energy, say looking at a thing, the more the thing becomes, real. It's like Pinocchio. He became a real boy when he was loved enough, or when he was seen enough, and when he was loved into existence. Like the hero's journey.
Yeah. So when exactly did you start Bear? And 'cause you started as a journal first.
I started Bear, I think, on November 16th in 2020. Yeah. Um, and I started it because maybe of all these American poets, and I just think that the Yanks are just great. They're so full of confidence. It is crazy. And like sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes it can be a little bit too much. But I love the energy and the enthusiasm. And when I just saw these really young people, like 2021, and they were like, I started to press you guys. It's awesome. And I'm like, my God, like if I sent out a tweet like that, I'd be blacklisted. I probably am blacklisted in Ireland because I am so active online. But I mean, I do have a degree in IT, and I want to break the internet and make it work for me, which it does because I do a lot of these cool tech things. Because I think if you're not learning, what's the point in anything? And if you're not talking about your work, I'm just not into being cool. I'm not, I'm like, it's boring. Being cool is boring. Not talking about your work, you're boring. It's because you don't believe in it. Like, why not be bold? Why not be brazen? We're only here for a blink of an eye. Like, go for it. But I suppose what I don't care about is the feedback, and you can respect people's time and energy and not overtake it too much. And you see that with the American journals. They believe in their work, they talk about it, and then that's it, they move on. So I thought if they can do it, I can do it, why not? And it all again comes from, say, in Ireland, we're told so much. Well, I was told so much anyway, especially when I was little in school. Ireland is the land of saints and scholars. The Irish people are loved the world over. Irish people are so creative. Irish people are so talented. We have the best writers in the world. I was told that again and again and again, and I really internalized it and I really believed it. I just thought, well, I'll see what's in Ireland. I already know that there's a load of really cool UK poets, and I wanted to read more of their work. And that whole collaborative thing that all the other poets did, like Bernadette Mears, she had a journal that was she used to photocopy it with her friend, and she just wanted to publish all her friends' work. Um, John Ashbery, he set up a journal as well, and that was like his manifesto, and that was him boasting, and that was him saying, "Look, world, look at me," and all of these, say, American people were very okay with being their own critique circle, with being their own fans, and with telling other people, I got published in this journal. Of course you did, hon. You're an editor. Like, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? But I mean, at one time that's shocking, but at the same time, it's freeing because I don't want to have that mindset because it's all mindset, or it's energy work and it's mindset because words control your mind. Words control your thoughts become hormones, your hormones become a state of being, the state of being becomes your characteristics, and your characteristics become your life. And I tried to meditate. I did transcendental meditation. I've spent money on it. Nothing works. But if I read an experimental poem, it's better because it's pure. And I wanted to share that with the world. So I did the journal and it just took off. And then I just said on Twitter without thinking, I'd love to turn this into a press. And next thing I knew, people were emailing me going like, what do you think of this? I just thought, oh my God, these people actually think I'm going to do it. I don't know what I'm doing. But then I said, yeah, it's great. I'm going to publish it. I was like, why did I send that? I don't know what I'm doing. And I was teaching full time and it was sixth class. And it was an intense year, lockdown, teaching with a mask, teaching a class that old. And I just thought, I'm just going to go for it. So I started to publish books in July. So it's only been, I don't know, July, August, September, October, November, December, I suppose 6 months. We've published all these books behind me there.
Yeah, so many
And
books.
loads more to come.
You know what I've been told? I was told by some unfriendly person that I was wrong for saying that Penteract Press has a vision, as though you're supposed to put all that aside and just
No,
and
that's it.
serve people. But it's strange because there's no motivation to do anything unless you've got a vision.
Yeah. You have to have an objective because if you don't have an objective, then you're like a homeless person walking around a shopping centre because you're trying to put down time. Life is all about being magnetized, and that person is just simple, and they're from a different century because it is literally a new century. So they have this old world thinking. And I see it in school, and the kids will keep you present, and if you're not present, they will like it will be horrific. But first thing I do, I write down my plan for the day. Say if I'm subbing and if it's a different school, I will get their books. Here's my plan. Then I'm going to put it up on the board. Here's what we're doing for English, Irish, maths, whatever. And then I will put up a colouring sheet. And I'm like, if you do this, you get this. If you do this, we also get PE. And I let them know, and they have a trajectory. They have a journey because if someone doesn't have a journey, they've no destination. And if you've no destination, you're like a snake eating your tail, and that's ridiculous. You have to have a vision. And I have a big vision. Well, I don't have a big vision for the press, but the press has a big vision, and I just have to be its worker bee and just do it.
So I know how much work it is. It's a lot of work running a press, and so to bring out the number of books you have is amazing. You do use print on demand distribution. It's through Lulu. And
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about that because there's obviously something that Pentrack considered when we started, and we occasionally still consider it. And I imagine it would cut down the workload a bit.
hmm
How have you found that experience?
It's been amazing. Again, I don't know, because I was so inspired, and you have to remember a lot of this came from lockdown. Like even it started in July, but it was still lockdown in Ireland. Like I still wasn't going anywhere, so I was at home all the time, and it is very busy at home when you have a toddler. Like you don't have any time to yourself. But then you realize you have to have time for yourself, because if you don't, next thing you know, your whole life is just spent on being a mother. But your job as a mother is to make the child more independent and push them away. So you can't lose yourself to the label of being a wife and a mother, which so many women can do, and so many women warned me against. So I kind of, that's why everything with me is really potent. It's really, really small, but a really, really potent. I'm like an essential oil, and I think you have to have that energy going forward with it. So I knew with Lulu, I just thought, these are the books I want to read. And I found all of these amazing poets, and I thought, I can't wait. I don't want to wait around. So I just said, look, here's the date. So let's try and aim for this and let's go for it. And then I would say, I'm not going to edit your work because I don't believe in that. And some people are really surprised by that, because with some editors, they had a lot of like toing and froing. In a way, I'm going to use the word disgusting. I was disgusted when I heard that, and I said that to the person, that's disgusting. Someone going through your poem and telling you what word to put out, but that's their own internal bias projected on your work. No, that's not okay. So I suppose I was lucky that I was able to put a structure in place. So I let the poets. It's all about managing people's expectations. That's why my tagline is publishing the very best of the experimental arts for my toddler's playroom. Like, that's being really bold, and I do that, and I always laugh when I read that out. But I'm in my toddler's playroom, so like, don't be expecting like a Zoom call, holding your hand, going through your poems. That's not, show up as your best self or shove off. Show up with your work that you want to scream to the top of the world, or get lost. I'm not in the mood, and that's the energy I put across, with the press. And yeah, it works. But yeah, I have that structure in place. So I manage people's expectations. I let them know what's going to happen. I am going to cut back on blurbs, because I'm just so over 3 blurbs. People sending blurbs that are reviews. People sending blurbs that are the size of a pamphlet. Not into it. Not into it. Stop it. And yeah, just constant waiting for a blurb. So one blurb, keep it cool, keep it chill. It's all managing the energy. Keep the energy that goes into that book very, very relaxed, because I've noticed a direct correlation. If there's kind of cool energy going into it, it always does better. I went with Lulu because I was lucky. We have Sure Vision Press in Ireland, and they are amazing. They're a surrealist press, and I've bought all their books, and I noticed that they use Lulu, and it worked really well. Their books were amazing, and I wanted to do something that I didn't have too much involvement in, because I find the more direct involvement I have in a thing, the more I think about it, the more I overthink about it, the more it becomes unmanageable, and mistakes happen. Human error happens. And I'm too much of a creative to do the mundane work. I don't like, doing the mundane. So yeah, I can't recommend Lulu enough. That, and you're making books more accessible, because you can keep the prices a little bit lower. If they ever have deals, you can share those deals with people. And I use their global distribution, so that means their books are. I mean, there's hundreds of sites the books are published in, but sometimes the revenue is 0.00 if it's bought on Amazon. But at least the poet's work is getting out there, because it's not always about money. But yeah, I can't recommend it enough. And I'm very obvious that I use Lulu, because when I did computer programming, we were told this isn't about computer programming, this is about a revolution, and it's about sharing your knowledge, because in the past no one had knowledge, and there was gatekeepers. And I got my degree, I finished in about 2003, 2004, and they said, in coding you're going to learn a new language every year in computer programming, and the first program you're always going to make, the result has to be that the computer flashes up hello world. And that's to let you know that I think it was the first coders, that was the first outcome that they wanted from their piece of code. But it was also to let you know that the only reason we have technology as we know it now is because technology came about as a war effort, and those coders refused to give it to the government. They refused to keep it private, and they would take the code, they'd go home and they would build computers in their garages, and they would teach others to code. And that's how we got it. That's how it's not as privatized as what it could have been. So I leave breadcrumbs. The journal, that's why the journal's address is bearbrother.wordpress.com, because if someone sees it, they're like, how do I do this? It's a WordPress site. How do I use a WordPress site? You go to YouTube, because that's what I did. How do I set up a press? You go to my site. Oh, you can buy this directly from Lulu. Okay, so I could do that. So it's about leaving breadcrumbs, seeing if other people could do it, because the only thing that's different between me, maybe, and someone else is just organizing it, the power of intention, visioning it, and then just really going hell for leather and hundreds of hours of work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very tempting. About 10 years ago, I wouldn't have considered print on demand, but the way that the quality has improved over this last decade, they're now making amazing books, which are all just a human being does not touch them. They're straight from computer to printer and out, and the quality is so much better than it used to be. And as you say, the distribution is very appealing, because I do wonder how many people have put off buying from Penteract because of the postage costs, which is a shame. But and
Yeah.
also my house wouldn't be full of boxes, which it is now.
Yeah. Because you see, then, there's this great phrase, are you working for the business or are you working on the business? Because I'm working on the business and that's up here. I don't want to work for the business because I don't have that. I'm not able to do that basic admin work. I can't. It wrecks my head and I make mistakes, because I'm too busy thinking of 10 other things at once. I'd rather be writing a poem. I'd rather be talking about it online. I'd rather be doing marketing. I'd rather be spreading the hype. So it's all about what you're good at. And yeah, the quality is great, but they manage all the payments and you can add people directly into paying it. We support the Féileacáin Ireland charity, so I contacted them and I let them know, and I got their PayPal details, and they're added directly into some of the books, and that's amazing. Because the less I have to do in accounting, the better. Because designing a book cover, even though I do work fast, it still takes time because they're usually, it's an image that I create, then I might digitalize it, then I'll glitch it, then I'll do something else, and they all take time. Um, and even with a book, going through it, checking it, proofing it, seeing what it looks like. And that's a huge thing. You might notice that. Like a book as a PDF is completely different to an actual book. A poem as an online poem is completely different to a poem that's going to be in a book with margins and an interior printed margin and how they look on the page facing each other. And, there's all that visioning. And again, it's visioning it. Do you know I publish all the books before I even have a physical proof? That's crazy. That's crazy. Sometimes, like the UK people all have the books like 3 weeks before me because it takes 3 weeks for them to get to Ireland, and I'm still like, this book is amazing. You're gonna love it, because in a way it's like I'm a shaman and I can just see it and I know it. I know it to be true, and it always is. It's like with the calendars. Like I bring the calendars with me from room to room because they are so beautiful. But it took me 3 weeks to get them, and they were still for sale on the site like 3 weeks ago. I think that's brazen. But you have to be brazen. You have to have a bit of a brass neck, because otherwise you'd be the quiet one in the back of the classroom, and no one will ever care, because no one is coming to save us. We have to be our own cheer team.
Yeah, you're convincing me about
Hey, I'm a
certain of these
hypnotherapist.
processes.
Yeah, I'm a hip. I just said that was my. Do you know? I went to a doctor once. I was having a procedure done, and the way he handled the whole situation, he had done hypnotherapy, and he was really slick at it. And just as I went under, I said, I'm a hypnotherapist too, and I know you've done it. And he came over to me all excited. Yes, I have. I'm a hypnotherapist. And then I passed out. But yeah, no, hypnotherapy was amazing. So language, what language
Yeah.
with the power of intention.
Well, yeah, let's talk about it a bit more then, because we've been talking lately about making this podcast more than just about poetry. Let's expand it and see what else we can explore.
I don't think this podcast has ever been about poetry. It's about why, it's about who. And like a lot of people don't consider them as poets. They're using poetry as a tool to make real something else, you know. And there is something about poetry. It's different from writing a book. It's different from, I don't know, poetry is this magical place between political, between art, between imagined, between real and yet to be real.
And hypnotism, hypnotherapy, all of this, meditation, which you mentioned earlier, that's in that same area. The letting go of the ego and the shamanistic aspects.
Yeah, letting go of the fixed mindset. I have a very fixed mindset. And I feel sometimes And I said it to the press, and like, the poets, some of the poets are really nice. Said, no, you're actually lovely to deal with. And I'm like, really? Because sometimes, like, my emails, I'm like, whoa, I get to the point very fast. And, I'm like, no, this needs to be this way. I don't have time to, to explain it anymore. You have to trust me. This has to be, you just have to change it. And it's, I don't know, you kind of have to remove yourself from the situation and get out of it.
So let's talk about hypnotism. What is hypnotism? Does it, because people say very conflicting things about it, that practitioners of hypnotism will say it's not a real thing, but it works. So what does that
Well,
mean? And how do we
okay.
define a real thing?
See, they're saying that because they're trying to hypnotize you. What they're saying to you is it's really scary, it's very powerful, but I don't want to scare you, because if you're scared, your thinking brain is alerted, and the more your thinking brain is alerted, the more you're going to resist me. Whereas if I sit beside you and if I'm all chill and easy going, like, I don't know how it works, but it works. And they have the intention within their brain that does work, but I don't want to scare you. I want your sleepy brain, your subconscious, to be alerted here. And the only way you can ever talk to someone's subconscious is if they're very confused or if they are relaxed. So with hypnotherapy, it's all about the therapeutic outcome and the holistic outcome that you have when you're talking with someone. So, say, like, not that I would consciously use it in school, but I noticed a lot of people who, I don't know, they were able to kind of get kids to do really well. And I realized that the more competitive I was with them, I was kind of more in teacher mode. Whereas when I sat at the back of the classroom, or when I sat at their tables, and when they would pass comments like, I wish it was 3 o'clock, I'm like, yeah, I want it to be 3 o'clock too. And the more you're kind of, you let go of any tension, and the more relaxed someone is, the more the subconscious will kick in because it'll feel safe, and your brain will slip out of survival mode, because I think everyone's in survival mode, especially with social media and everything is flicking so fast. And we have the potential to access so much information that that can be overwhelming. Um, but yeah, when someone's really relaxed and you have a therapeutic outcome from them, then you can say it. But advertisers use it all the time. Lyrical poets use it all the time because they have, I mean, that's one of the most famous scripts is you're trying to get the person into their body. Here's your body sitting in the chair, it's feeling heavy and relaxed, and as you feel relaxed, your legs get heavier and heavier, and your breathing now starts to get slower and deeper, and as your breathing gets deeper, your eyes start to relax. You're getting heavier, and that's okay because you want to dream. And that's it. You're getting their body, their you might mention something about sense of smell, might mention something about food. You'll mention something that they did in the past that they were successful, and it's somatic, and it's getting them into their body. And when someone's really in their body, and you're not alarming their conscious brain, you then have direct access to their subconscious brain. And it's kind of scary, but I see people doing it all the time. And there's people out there who are really good at, say, like, they say that your social hierarchy is communicated through small talk. Now, I got that phrase from TikTok. I love TikTok because I am so woke because of it. And it's mainly Americans. God bless America. And it's so true. And I was never really good at small talk because, I'm really, I don't know, I can be lightning fast. And if someone says do something, I have the vision of it being done. I see it. And because I see it, I'm like, why are all these ding dongs talking about it? I have it done already. Just. But a lot of people don't have that ability, and it annoys them when someone does because they don't understand it because they can't vision. So now I've learned to not do the thing, but to chat and to kind of let people know who I am and what maybe I could do through chit chat. And chit chat is a form of hypnotherapy. Ads, all hypnotherapy. When you go into a shop and the shop is really confusing, you will make fast decisions when you're confused, you know. And they say confused brain doesn't buy. That's a total lie. If you confuse someone's senses and if you're asking them a load of questions and if you phrase a question in a certain way, then they'll buy. Now, I'm not able to do that because I feel it's really manipulative and can't manipulate people because that's a misuse of trust. So I'm glad I did it, and I would recommend people do read up on hypnotherapy because I suppose if you're aware of the capitalistic system we're living in, most people would be conscious of it. but it's quite startling. Like even how the government communicates to us, even their body language, because they would have people on staff who have done another thing. It's called NLP, and that's neuro linguistic programming, and that uses all of that to kind of convey a certain message of who you are. It's like when I go into school, I wear big hoop earrings because I'm letting the kids know, hey, I'm kind of cool, I'm kind of edgy, and I'm not going to take any messing, but we're going to have fun because you're going to do work. And I say what I mean, and I mean what I say, and then I follow through, and then it's amazing.
Yeah, I know a
So,
little bit about NLP. I first learnt about it. You must know the magician Derren Brown.
yeah,
I read there was a book of his. I can't remember the name of it. It's a really good book where he talks about the basics of hypnosis in stage magic and NLP. And so I sort of got into stage hypnotism for a while, trying out some of the techniques. I
yeah.
wasn't very good at it. But I also found it didn't work on me.
No, it didn't work on you because you're very analytical, and your brain, I can even see that in you. Your brain is very alert. But if I
I'm
was
very
to,
tense all the time as well.
yeah, it didn't work on me because of that too. My brain would be very alert, and probably like it used to be in survival mode a lot. I've kind of learned to not be in survival mode and to try be in the moment. But still, I have to be conscious of people, because so many people are so adept at it. Anyone who's like, say, really chatty or really popular, people like that scare me because I'm like, you always get what you want because you're using something that I had to learn from a book, and that comes naturally to you. That's scary. Like I'm not engaging in that. You know. I did find hypnotherapy hard because I couldn't read the scripts because anytime I'd read them when I was, at home, the fire was lit, a cup of tea beside me, I'd usually end up falling asleep. So I'd usually hypnotize myself. So I was a very bad hypnotist.
And what about the meditation then? You've studied meditation.
Yeah, yeah. When I was little, the Maharashi was on TV, and it was a repeat. We only had one channel, RTE. A lot of other people had loads of channels, but like we lived on a farm, so my mother maintained if you want to play, get outside. You have a tree, go climb it. So I was watching the news. I think it was about maybe 5, maybe 6, and the Maharashi goes on and he said, transcendental meditation is only for rich white men. And I just thought, how very dare you? I'm going to do transcendental meditation. But now I know why he said it, because it actually is only for rich white men. Because when you're a rich white man, you come from privilege, you have access, you have a trained brain, you're able to make a lot of money, which means that your brain is very calm, very focused, and you do have to have a lot of. My brain isn't disciplined enough. You have to be able to kind of sit with it and sit with all. I don't know, like I kind of think it's like in schools, and I see this a lot. It's always the middle class people who end up being teachers. It's always the same. It's so boring. You never see anyone who's like really working class as a primary school teacher in Ireland. I've never really seen it. And then you get all these middle class people pushing their values down on all the kids. Now, not so much anymore because education in Ireland, the teachers are so cool, and it's really about the individual child's needs now, and all our expectations vary according to each kid. But anyway, so it's I kind of forget where I was going now. I kind of hypnotized myself.
You said earlier that you found that poetry did a better job as meditation
Yeah,
than the techniques
yeah.
that you're supposed to learn.
Yeah, definitely. And that was, I had discovered that the hard way. You said you were really hard to be hypnotized. I was too. But after I did teaching practice, I was really stressed out. There was a lot going on. I was drinking a lot of coffee, and I was, I think, 30, and I was older, but I was still living like I was like 19. Loads of coffee, not enough sleep. And I got on the plane, I couldn't travel. I had a huge panic attack. So then another time I was traveling, I went into my doctor and I said, like, look, give me all the good stuff. Give me the heavy, hardcore drugs. So he does, and I'm like, take them, and they don't work. So then I take another one, another one. I take 7, really, really hardcore medicine. Doesn't work. So I went to him like, what are you playing at? And he said, you took enough to tranquilize a horse. And he said, you weren't. I was like, I was up walking around. I was freaking out. I had to ask for the alcohol and quite quickly. And he said, well, Michelle, he got out from behind his desk, sat on the table, made a worried face. He said, I think it's all up here then. And, that's quite worrying. And then he left me hanging. I was like, okay, there's no solution here, so I'll have to find my own. And I suppose that's when I learned about, how does the mind work and what can you do to kind of calm the mind down. And I don't know how it came to me, but something told me, buy Alice in Wonderland, buy the book and read that. And then have the intention at the start of it, I want to try and understand this narrative. And I want to be able to picture every single thing. And my brain was so confused that the next time I got on a plane, I was sleeping well. I didn't drink any coffee. And I read that book and I had music playing as well. And I was able to travel. Whereas, like, drugs didn't work. But Alice in Wonderland did, because that was wildly experimental. That was experimental before it really was, that huge movement. And I think that's when I realized the power of words and the power of confusing words. So really, and I think I said it in one of my, I don't know, intros, like read these poems but have an intention at the start. But I kind of forget to say it now, and I don't want to be preachy. But like, if you have an intention before you read one of my poems, like, I want to get an answer on why, I don't know, why my poetry isn't doing well. And then read a really wild or wildly avant-garde language type poem, surrealist poem, and say to your brain, I want to understand this. And your brain is going to be so busy trying to understand it and visualize it that at the end, then you could say to yourself, okay, I'm going to give myself a minute and I just want to vision and just see what answer would have come to me from my question. And you'd be really surprised at what you get. I did a really cool workshop with Poetry Foundation in Chicago, and oh my God, it was so funny. They read out this poem, and it was 7 different versions of the poem. And there's a whole term for it, I forget. I know Aaron Kent had a book out on one of his poems, and he had all these different drafts of it. And the Americans wanted to revolt, like they were up in arms, they were getting angry about it, because it really challenged them. Um, and some of them got it and some of them didn't, and that's okay because everyone comes to a thing from their own place. But it was really interesting because the lady leading the workshop said sometimes people use experimentation because they want to hide something, but they're still saying something that's very true, but they're hiding it. And then I wrote in the comments, because everyone was writing in the comments, is it because with lyrical poetry is all about the body and getting into your body, but some people want to escape from that because they don't want to feel their feelings. They want to think their feelings, but you can't think your feelings because you'll go crazy. So instead you trick your mind and you give it this poem and you allow your body to feel your feelings. And that's magic, you know. I'm a, you
Yeah.
know, and you get that as well from your kind of poetry. And even I listened to your really cool interview with Stephen Fowler, and he was kind of along the same lines that sometimes you just need a break and you need to read something that will kind of break that. And again, it goes back to hypnotherapy. That's all about using a pattern break. So when you see this certain condition, you break that pattern. So you can do that by reading a poem. And I suppose it's nice to kind of have something like wellness is boring. Meditating it's kind of boring. Like, and even when you think of the word wellness, it's kind of been hijacked by, I suppose I can say this, like skinny white women, really, hasn't it, in a way, wellness. And it's a bit boring. And like sometimes if you have a lot of self-sabotaging habits, the last thing you're going to do is meditate. Well, you can trick your brain. You can say, okay, read this stupid poem, and then you'll read it. But by the end, there's a space in your mind. And if your mind is really angry about something, that's really good because it's trying to figure it out. But in trying to figure it out, it's growing because that feeling of like fire in your brain, that's neurons growing. That's your brain growing. That means you've got more space. That means you've got more cognitive tissues. That means you're going to be able to process your own emotions better. And that's amazing.
As an analogy, creating a space in the poetry community. And of course, that's what you're doing, and it's going well. And you've got a very busy year ahead of you. So I don't know if you want to now talk a bit about that, about what's coming up.
Yeah, there's loads of cool stuff coming up this month. I have another kids poetry collection coming out with Carl Bunting. We have one of the Lawrence Stern Prize winners. His work's coming out. Mark Lindsay, and he's amazing because he went to, is it Glasgow University? It was the same college as AJ Moore, and she's got a collection out with Beir Press as well. And like, he's a member of the Cut Collective. You should go to their website because God, they are cool. We have a really cool collection of, it's kind of like a formalist poetry. You'd like that, with Matthew. That's coming out this week. A lot of the work I've done already. Really, with publishing, you're supposed to work like 2 years in advance. But because I had it mainly on invite only, because I wanted a certain, I was just reading, I wanted to read certain people's work. And I don't really want to read a slush pile, you know. God, there's so much stuff coming out then. A lot of, oh, there's going to be some plays coming out. That's going to be
Wow.
cool. Yeah, because I love the whole like Beckett. I went to see one play when I was really young. Like it was called The Monkey's Paw. But my school friends did, and they were in like a really low level in art in English, and they were in that low level because it was an old system we had. It was assumed that they wouldn't do that well, so they had to do less work, and I don't know. But they wanted to see a play, and they came back to the school, and their eyes were they were different. Their eyes were on fire, and it was amazing. And they all started to do really well at English, and it was because they went to see a play in the theatre called The Monkey's Paw. And I love that. And I mean, even Samuel Beckett, any of his plays, I've watched all of them on, again, Irish TV, you know, celebrating the arts, especially in the 80s. It was either Dallas or watch a Beckett play. And God, they're fab, you know, they're fab. So yeah, there's loads of really cool stuff coming on. Um, yeah, I kind of like to kind of keep it. I don't even like to reveal the covers because I feel if you reveal a cover too soon, it loses its message, you know. Kind of strike while the iron's hot and then move on. It's done then, you know, and then you have to kind of move on to the next thing. It's like a trail.
Yeah, I know what you
How
mean,
about, how about,
because it's very difficult with us because we do a pre-order option, and I'm experimenting a lot with when that should be. If it's just the week before the book comes out, what's the point? If it's 2 months before, which we've done, that seems way too early, and you
yeah.
run the risk of losing momentum before the book's even in the world. Yeah, there are lots of things to consider. You know, I hope people appreciate that we have to we have to think about
Oh,
all these things.
so much. Yeah. But you know, I feel like if a cover is revealed too soon, then the cover becomes familiar with people, then it becomes saturated, and then people will actually start to think, I had that book. And if they see you talking about the book or they see pictures of the book, they're like, oh yeah, I have the book. And then you're like, actually, no, I don't. Because that's happened to me loads of times, you know? So yeah, there's a lot to consider. I kind of like, did you hear about Banksy? I love Banksy. He had all these pop-ups around the world, and say in New York was the one I heard about, and it was like this dodgy old geezer, like a few like traffic, I don't know, coney things, and just a bit of art thrown up on a bit of galvanized wood, and he was selling his original art for like $5 a piece or something. And it was more of a social experiment to see if people would take it seriously. You know, what has to happen for people to appreciate, like, and the sign was Banksy Art Originals, and like what has to happen for people to take someone else as an authority figure. And you know, turns out people need the red velvet, they need the exclusivity, they need to be told to go away, and that just drives people crazy. And you know, it's all about that negative and positive, and we're all just protons floating in the sky looking for a neutron, you know, be the neutron.
That's what a great way to end the podcast, I think. That line. So yeah,
Yeah.
Michelle, this has been so good. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I'm pleased that we seem to agree on so many things, and I love the work you're doing. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Your podcast I've just found it amazing. And I listened to that on the way to school, and it really gave me space. And I just wonder, do people realize how lucky we are to be in a society, to be in a world where we have access to so much information, but rather than mindlessly consuming people's content that's aimed to sell us stuff, even though technically we do sell books, but we're selling ideas and hope as well. But to have the podcast and to have so, you know, that's great. Well, thank you. That's my long-winded compliment.